Test 1, 2, 3. I'm going to switch it out to see what's going on the screen. Test 1, 2, and 3. All right, welcome everybody. That's good to see you in person. Like I said a few minutes ago, we have welcome to those who are watching on the YouTube channel also. We have 4 sessions including tonight. So they're tedious. Last week it was lots of history, but I think you found it interesting to see what's the background and so on. And tonight will be even more kind of closer to what we develop and so on concerning the crisis in the time of Sennacherib and so on and so forth. So Vicky might be joining us. She will come in and settle down with us. It's a dark road and so on. So 3 more apart from tonight, and then I will give you the schedule at the end of November as far as when we will be continuing and so on and so forth. So that's great. Good to have you. Let's take our usual time of silence, and then we'll start with our program for tonight. Father of grace, we travel life very fast. It's always the 1st, it's always the 15th, and it's always the 30th. The weather, which we cannot really criticize, affects us. Time change, need of sleep, fatigue, family being overwhelmed. I'm thinking about Ernie and Carol. I lift them up in prayer, Father, tonight. Traveling to Vancouver takes the whole day. Doesn't matter how long you stay there. The fatigue, the demands of life are there also. Looking after the house, activities, name it, Lord. We need your grace. We need your rest. Help us to be disciplined and prioritize properly. And while, Father, we scrutinize your word tonight, as we do usually in these classes, come and join us, Vicky. We need to be sensitive of your presence, lay aside the everyday situation, the crisis that we go through, or the misery sometimes, and the challenges provided by the everyday life. Would you be kind enough, dear Lord, to help us to push it aside a tiny bit and pick up later where we have left, to make room for you, to study your word and to discover perhaps one thing or 2 maybe that we can apply in our daily walk. We give you thanks in advance. You're faithful. You will not let us down. We know our destiny. It's a cast in stone. And the more we grow old in maturity, spiritually and also physically, we are quick to discern that we do not belong to this place. This is not our abode. It's falling apart. It is this way. Help us to accept it. We will not make it better. We're looking forward to go home with you in our new abode, in our new body, and so on and so forth. It will happen because it is written. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Make your abode. Good to see you, Vicky. Hope the road was okay. Page 17 of 27. I'm just going to say a few words as far as review from last week. Kindly, I have a PowerPoint for you tonight and so on. So that's the invasion basically of Sennacherib, capital A, the invasion of the Assyrian rather, and the invasion of Sennacherib. We did not get deep in the text. I read verse 1 and I'm going to read verse 1 again. Now in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Judah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. And then I explained to you many details last week. You can review your note on that. what I would like you to pick up, try to put your pencil or pen on, in 703, Sargon II died. Try to pinpoint that in your notes. 703, Sargon II died. And then Hezekiah will join the revolt here and becomes the leader of the revolt in disobedience to Isaiah the prophet. You have this in your note. You don't need to note that right now. Then I gave you cities that join in the alliances. Basically, Edom, Moab will join them and so on. And Ekron city, those cities of the Philistine that we have seen last week will act also. Ekron, Ashdod, and more also will join in the alliance and so on. So basically what Hezekiah began to do right now, just to bring you back without necessarily giving you all the details again, Hezekiah built a tunnel that my sister here walked, the tunnel of Hezekiah from the Gihon spring straight down to the pool of Siloam. He's preparing for a lengthy siege of the city against the Assyrian. Okay? And I gave you the two scriptures that you have, I think, right here, the Second King and so on. That's what I gave you. And I basically left you at that place here. Okay? So if it's repetitious right now, so be it, because I think I left you quite close to it. What do you have right now? What is your last sentence in your book? This too. Okay, perfect. That's what I wanted. Now everything is new. Have a good night. I will slow down. No need to rush anything, because you will like what you will be learning also. But we're still, before reading, we're going to get in the text of the scriptures only in the second half of tonight. So in 701 BC, the Assyrians invades. They invade. In 701 BC, they invade. And the king now is Sennacherib. If you want to know how to write his name, he's right on verse 1. I just read it for you. What happened basically is this: the major part, not the totality, but the major part of the Assyrian army came down the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, close to Mount Carmel in Jerusalem. Close to Mount Carmel. And what happened at Mount Carmel, a number of nations that rebelled, such as Edom, Moab, and Ammon, they surrender fighting against the Assyrian, close to Mount Carmel. They surrender fighting. The Assyrian are too powerful.
What is the third city? I've got Edom, Moab,
And Ammon. Ammon. And that will not help Hezekiah a bit. It will not help Hezekiah a tiny bit. Closer to the south, down the coast of here, these cities, you need to go south because Mount Carmel is basically north, but closer to the south, the Philistine city here. At that place, the Egyptian army was heavily defeated. They were heavily defeated. And out of that revolt here, Ekron was taken again. And here, when you go there, you have these cities right here also. Ekron and right here in this vicinity. Now part of the army will go basically towards Jerusalem right now. Not the totality of it, because basically Sennacherib divided the army in two So you still have some people in the north, and part of the army will go now towards Jerusalem. Do you remember Isaiah chapter 10, the list of these cities going from 30 miles, 15 miles? So what we have seen together, Sylvie, you don't have your screen? You should tell me that.
Well, I'm walking early.
No, it's easier to have it. We have two, so let's use the technology that we should have here. There you go. The bottom will disappear. So we saw it in chapter 10 as being a prophecy. Now here it's history. It's being fulfilled. You don't need to renote all that. I would encourage you to go back to your binder because I gave you a half pager of this. Okay? You have this in your notes. If you want to note them, I don't mind. You can do it, but you have it. That's why I cut and pasted the slides again. If you need anything, those online also, you make sure to email Olga all the time. She's the one that provided you with these things here. So now the Assyrian armies move towards Jerusalem, the cities, and that's what they defeated on the route. You have more cities for your own note in the book of Micah, chapter 1, verses 8 to 16. They are not on the PowerPoint because Micah mentions cities in his own place. Micah chapter 1, verses 8 to 16. You have additional cities because you need 46 cities. The Bible does not report all the 46, but we have a whole bunch of them. Okay, so Micah chapter 1, verses 8 to 16. We have more cities taken closer to Micah. They are different than these guys. So these things, as we saw in the book of Micah and as we saw in the first part of Isaiah, it was prophecies to come. But now it's happening in Isaiah's own day right now. Okay? So now with cities in the north, Mount Carmel, taken, and cities in the Shephelah, Shephelah, we call it the Shephelah. The invasion is taking place. And one city was left, and it's Lachish. One city was left, the city of Laish. The reason why I say that to you, I don't know if I have that Lachish on that slide. I don't think I have it. You need an Old Testament map for this. I don't have Lachish. Doesn't really matter at this point. The reason why I gave you Lachish, it was still being besieged. That's when Hezekiah asked for peace. Make a note of this. Hezekiah will ask for peace. Realizing that things are not doing too well, with the Egyptian having been defeated on the coast. In the cities of the Philistines, they disappeared like smoke in a moment of time. Now make a note. At the break, you can bring me back to these cities right now. Note this, because I gave you the header again, the historical interlude regarding the crisis of the 14th year of Hezekiah. Okay, the initial demands of Sennacherib is Assyrian, okay? You know this already. Sennacherib is the king of Assyria. And you have on the slide right now the initial demand of Sennacherib. You must release Paddy, and make him king of Ekron again, because Paddy was the king of Ekron. Release him. The request was to Hezekiah, release Paddy and give me money as a tribute, daily or monthly or yearly. Hezekiah did that. He released Paddy, and Paddy became again the king of Ekron, and he paid the tribute. 2 Kings 18, 13 to 16. 2 Kings 18, 13 to 16. What you just see on the slide right now, paying tribute and releasing Paddy, that was the original conditions of Assyria to the king Hezekiah. Here, what I say now is very important for you to note because it can relate to our days here. But then after that, Sennacherib breaks his promises, and guess what? He will ask for more. More conditions. And it's going to turn dramatic. We're building a case right now. It's a bit like watching a movie. He will break the demands. He will break his conditions of releasing Paddy and pay me tribute, which would be just perfect under my yoke. But he will ask for more. He will ask for the surrendering of Jerusalem. The surrendering of Jerusalem, the center of the earth. And the deportation of its citizens. When I'm talking about surrendering Jerusalem, you know that all the conflicts of the world built around that small country smack in the center of the planet. So Sennacherib will ask for the surrendering of Jerusalem and the deportation of its citizen, meaning the Jewish people. And based upon these two things that I just said to you, the surrendering of Jerusalem and the deportation of its people, at that point, he has gone too far, steps beyond what God permitted him to do. The him is Sennacherib. He went beyond what God asked him to do. Because remember that the Assyrian is an instrument in the hands of God to punish the Jews, but you cannot go beyond the point that you are allowed to. So to repeat slowly to you, he has gone one step beyond what God permitted him to do. And what's fun to know for you, it's that both the Egyptians' record and the Assyrian records, as well as the Bible records, I repeat, Egyptian records, Assyrian records, and biblical records, they all agree that something in those years happened that something special happened during the campaign against Jerusalem. Something happened during the campaign against Jerusalem, and something happened that it was incomplete. I just pull out a few slides of what Sennacherib would look like. These are not the type of people that you mess around with. Just look. It's gleaned, of course, but the painting and very accurate. And we have three sources in agreement. You have noted them already. The Egyptian records, the Assyrian records, and the biblical records are all in agreement that something special did happen, that the taking of Jerusalem was incomplete. The Assyrian people are not too good to record their failure. When you look at the face of this guy here, they don't like to record when things went wrong for them. So in the old records of Sennacherib, he describes in Encyclopedia, which I have on my bookshelf, the decisive victories that he did. He used, I besieged and took cities and cities. I besieged and took the spoil of war. That's their way of writing. But when he came to his records about Jerusalem, he worded it in a way that it doesn't look defeated, that he got something out of it. And you have a partial quote here. Instead of reading the whole quote, he wrote, I besieged and took spoil. Himself, Hezekiah, the king of Judah, like a caged bird, I shut him in Jerusalem, his royal city. You have no records of failure of capturing the city, and no records about destroying the city. He never did. That's the way he worded out, I shut up Hezekiah in his own city like a bird in the cage in his royal city. That's all you have. So once again, these three sources, the Egyptians' record in Cairo Museum, Assyrian records, and the biblical records agree that something happened, which we will discover through the next few weeks. Something happened that the siege of the city of Jerusalem failed, but Sennacherib will not write it this way. He will not write, I failed. So that's why these are, we call it, not contaminated, corrupted account of the biblical account. It's corrupted account. They don't want to record their failure, but the Bible gives the good that they do and also the bad. So because that's the truth here. Beautiful. That tedious part, you're out of it right now. Now, come with me, look at your outline in front of you. Arabic number 2, the Jewish and the Assyrian delegations, 36, 2 and 3. Place your fingers in verses 2 and 3. I'm asking you to circle a few things. Come. And the king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh, circle the king of Assyria, and circle Rabshakeh from Lachish, which I just told you, to Jerusalem to King Hezekiah with a large army. And he stood by the conduit of the upper pool on the highway on the fuller's field. Circle, he stood by the conduit of the upper pool on the highway of the fuller's field. Then Eliakim, circle Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, was over the household, and Shevna, circle Shevna, the scribe, and Joha, circle Joha, the son of Asaph, the recorder, came out to him. Okay? Came out to him. Look at the slide. Sennacherib sent Rabshakeh. Rabshakeh is not a proper name. It's not a person. It's a person, but it's not his name. He is the Assyrian chief officer. He is the Assyrian chief officer. Let me read for you 2 Kings. You don't need to turn, just make your notes. 2 Kings 18:17. It's right in front of you. 2 Kings 18:17, just to show you something. In verse 17, then the king of Assyria sent Tartan, Rabsaris, and Rabshakeh from Lachish to the king of Hezekiah. Okay? All of this, the famous Tartan, Rabsaris, both are title of Assyrian officer. These are not proper names. Tartan, it spells as it goes, Tartam. Rabsaris goes like this, R-A-B, Saris. You will see that if you're faithful to read the reference. These are not a fellow called Tartan or Rabsaris. These are ordinary officer with Rabshakeh, the chief officer of the army. So Rabshakeh, Tartan, and Rabsaris are titles, not names. It's new to you. Lots of people think that they are names and they look like names. What's fun to know, it's I'm going to call him now the Rabshakeh, which means the chief officer, came and stood at the very same place where Isaiah stood with King Ahaz in Isaiah chapter 7 verse 3 by the conduit of the upper pool of the highway of the fuller's field. Do you remember this? If you go to Isaiah chapter 7:3, you will find that same place where Isaiah stood with Ahaz, and he said to Ahaz, ask a miracle as high as the heavens and as deep as Sheol. And then he gave Ahaz the option, trust God or trust Assyria. Of course, he did not trust God. Ahaz at that time chose to trust Assyria. Ahaz at that time chose to trust Assyria, and he fell under the yoke of the Assyrian. That basically Judah still is right now. That event occurred more than 20 years ago in the context that we are right now. So between Isaiah chapter 7 and right now, Rabshakeh go to the same place, roughly 25 years occurred in between. That's why last week I told you, now prophecies of the old time here will come in the crisis of Hezekiah and so on. You can see, if we can pass the door with something tonight, relying on your scriptures. It's a complicated book to study. The entire Bible, I need to confess. That's why God has provided teachers for us to be able to study it. But it's so precise. The events that was prophesied now are coming to pass, and you know that there is a bunch of events that Isaiah spoke about, prophetically speaking, that did not occur yet, that will be fulfilled in the Great Tribulation, where the invasion will be worldwide instead of only Assyrian. And that's why I'm not boasting here, I'm just making a statement, the more we study, the more your prayer will become in line with the text. That's why at the beginning my prayer was, no hope here. What we're waiting for, it's not for a red government or a blue government. What we're waiting for is the second coming of the Messiah with the reign of peace. That should sink in your soul and stay with you forever. On this planet, it's never enough rest. Summers are always too short, too hot, or too cold. It doesn't work here. This is not your place. And it's going to change your perspective about life, about facing death, facing calamities, and so on. There is only, beloved, believe you me, I am, how do you say that? Not sarcastic, but dogmatic. There is only one truth. There is only one hope. And if your hope is on this city, what they call God's country, Vancouver Island, no thank you. Way too wet for me. Way too damp. I like a dry God, not a damp God. It's not your place here. I'm sincere about it. I'm not backing off on my word. We don't belong in that place here. As much as the ocean, you like it, and the mountains, it is pretty. Lowercase b. Okay? That's what struck me the most here. Same place. So Ahaz chose to trust Assyria. The result, they are still right now, 25 years later, under the Assyrian yoke here. Now, Hezekiah with the officer, we have 3 officers. I took a picture of them this afternoon. I like it. I Googled that and I found it and I said, okay, Olga, can you put? That's what happened. The guy in black with the funny hat is the Rabshakeh. And now he meets the Jewish and Assyrian delegation. Point number 2, that's the Jewish delegation right now on your verse 2. Then the king of Assyria, look at the picture, sent the Rabshakeh from Lachish to Jerusalem to King Hezekiah with a large army. We don't have Hezekiah on the scene here. And he stood by the conduit, verse 3. Then Eliakim is on the picture, Shebna and Joab, and now things will be said and they will record all this, and that's the rest of my exposition for the next 45, for the next hour if you want to. Okay? Sort of. Okay, Eliakim, notice now he is the head of the house. That's what it says here in verse 3. Then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household. It's a fulfillment of Isaiah 22, that he will be placed over the household, verses 20 to 24. Eliakim on the left-hand side of the picture, he is in charge of the household, in fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 22, verses 20 to 24. Shebna, the scribe, he is a scribe, a man of the letter, fulfillment of Isaiah 22, verses 15 to 19, and verse 25. I repeat. Shebna, the one in the middle, don't ask me if they're Jews. It's written on the slide. These guys are Jewish people. The other one is Assyrian. The scribe is a fulfillment of Isaiah 22, 15 to 19, and verse 25. He was demoted in the first stage. The second stage will be seen later. And Joah is the one that will record what's being said. He's a secretary, Joah. So that's all I have to say about this slide. I think it's a nice one. Now, at this point, look at your outline. Put your eyes on the outlines. The defiance of the Rabshakeh, 4 to 10. 4 to 10. Come with me, we read the text. The defiance of the Rabshakeh, the officer. Then Rabshakeh said to them, the them is the 3 guys, say now to Hezekiah, thus says the great king. Circle the great king, the king of Assyria. What is this confidence that you have? I say your counsel and strength for the war are only empty words. Now on whom do you rely that you have rebelled against me? Behold, you rely on the staff of this crushed reed, circle crushed reed, even on Egypt. Circle Egypt. on which if a man leans, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who rely on him. But if you say to me, we trust in Jehovah our God, it is not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah has taken away, and has said to Judah and to Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar. It's a question. Now therefore, come and make a bargain with my master, the king of Assyria, and I will give you 2,000 horses. If, circle the word if, you are able on your part to set riders on it. This is very sarcastic. How then can you repulse one official of the least of my master's servant and rely on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Have I now come up without the Lord's approval against this land to destroy it? Jehovah said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. Whew. Fasten your seatbelt. I'm going to give you information about all this. To start broader, in verses 4 to 7, he, the Rabshakeh, points out the futility of Judah's confidence. In verses 4 to 7, the Rabshakeh points out the futility of Judah's confidence. Now shrink it a little bit in verses 4 and 5. Then Rabshakeh said to them, say now to Hezekiah, thus says the great king, the king of Assyria, what is this confidence that you have? I say your counsel and strength for the war are only empty words. Now on whom do you rely that you have rebelled against me? So basically he's saying Judah's rebellion will prove to be absolutely fruitless. Judah's rebellion, Judah's is the Jews' rebellion against the Assyrian, will prove to be fruitless. Simply put, Judah has no defense. Folks, you don't even have an army. Look how arrogant and disrespectful. In verse 4, he never addresses Hezekiah as the king. He shows to Hezekiah, no respect. Say now to Hezekiah, not to King Hezekiah. He's looking down upon him. Because for him, the great king is who? The king of Assyria. Forget about Jesus as the king or Jehovah as the king. Basically, he says that Hezekiah is just a man of words without action. In verse 5, I say your counsel, strength for the war are only empty words. Now on whom do you rely that you have rebelled against me? Go to say to that king Hezekiah that he is just a man of false promises, which we don't have anymore in our governments today. No one is a man of empty words. Verse 6, behold, you rely on the staff of this crushed reed. This crushed reed is Egypt, on which if a man leans, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who rely on him. Simply put on your notes, Egypt at that point has proven to be of no help at all. Their army has been defeated on the coast of the Philistine cities, like I gave you in the first half of our exposition. That's the very thing that Isaiah predicted that Egypt will be your shame. Do you remember this? Write Isaiah 30, verse 3. Egypt will be your shame. It was a prophecy. Now it's being realized. The reference? It's Egypt. Yeah. Basically, if you lean, this is the crush reed, and if I lean on it, you know where it's going to go. It's going to roll, and I collapse with it. Yeah. I was just right there, perfect. You note what I just said. You lean on it for support, you collapse with it. We pause, because after that, I have more details.